Welcome back, you guys. Kick back and relax as we dive into another episode of Skip to Saturday. Hey, you guys. Welcome back. I hope you guys are having a lovely week so far. I have a question for you guys. What do you do when a friendship or a romantic partnership, despite all its love and effort, reaches its natural end? Like, what do you do? It's something that I thought about in the past year and a half because I experienced that in my friendship. So, with this particular friendship, nothing dramatic happened. There was no betrayal, no deceit. The friendship was always positive in my experience. I just realized, and it was a slow realization, to be honest, that I wasn't a priority in her life, that she was in mine. And when I realized that, it made me question everything that I knew or I thought I knew about forever connections. So today I'm going to dive deep into that topic that many of us probably experience, but rarely ever talk about. And that is the difficult but often beautiful truth that everything isn't meant to last. So going back to the friendship that I mentioned, I want to give you guys a little backstory and I'll spare you guys the details. So in 2021, at that point, we were already friends on Instagram. I think we had followed each other before then. Like, I think for me, I probably had followed her around 2017, around that time. In 2021 was the first time we actually met in person. And that's when I went to London. So when we hung out, we hit it off and our friendship grew quickly, despite us being in two different countries. And I want to emphasize that our friendship was never toxic or dramatic. She never said or did anything to create an unhealthy environment. The issue at hand was literally like the lack of effort and consistency. For the first year, I remember thinking like, she's going to be a lifelong friend. I had no doubt in my mind. And when she would come to the US for work, I appreciated that she would, make the 5-hour drive to come see me and she would stay over. We would hang out, do stuff. And when I was in the UK, we'd make a plan to meet up and do something or just go for lunch. And then in the summer of 2022, that's when things started to quietly shift. It's something that, I realize now looking back, but at that time, I didn't think anything of it. But the first thing that stands out to me is our lunch date that we had planned. I found a restaurant that I wanted to try and I was like, we can go here for lunch. So we both met up at the restaurant and we ordered our food and then she got a call and she was like, I'm going to take this call and it's going to be short. So she stepped out for the call. And what I thought was going to be like a 5-minute call was actually like 45 minutes. I will say 30 minutes just to be nice, but it was definitely more than 30 minutes. By the time our food arrived, she still hadn't come back. And it was, getting cold. And I was sitting there alone. The table next to us had these two ladies sitting there. And I remember them glancing over a few times because I wasn't eating. And it looked like I was there by myself. And so I'm pretty sure that if I was in their shoes, I would wonder, like, why is there so much food on her table and she's not eating? That was a little awkward, but I was like, whatever. So I just kind of killed time by going through my phone. And I was hoping at the same time that, she would come back or at least send me a text like, hey, this is taking a little longer than I expected. And then when she came back, she apologized and she was visibly upset. And the old me immediately accepted that. And I just, was like, it's okay. And I was being an understanding friend and completely dismissing how it made me feel. I didn't bring up the fact that, like, at any point, like, she could have at least given me a heads up that this is going to take longer. And it wasn't a life or death situation. So the phone call could have waited. But at that time, I ignored all of that. And then in 2023, a lot of little things started to pile up for me. For the most part, I was the one making all the plans when she was either here or when I was over there and putting in the effort to keep in touch. And at that time, it really didn't matter to me. Like, it was just one-sided almost. But then it got to a point when I started to notice a lack of effort. She would be incredibly active on social media, doing Q's and A's and giving lengthy and thoughtful responses to her followers. Yet with me, she couldn't offer the same consistent effort or even, check in. here and there. And I spent months making excuses for her. I was like, maybe she's busy or whatever. And I know that sometimes we will use social media as an excuse to like mentally check out. Like we can be active on there, but it doesn't mean that we want to have a conversation with someone. So I also take that into consideration. But, it just gets to a point when it's hard to ignore that they're choosing to put in more effort into other areas of their life and with others, but not with a specific person or a friendship. So then in September of 2023, she apologized for not being a good friend. And she sent me a voice note when she was here, and she got emotional, and I felt bad, and it felt really genuine. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this could be the change, right? And I invited her over. So she spent a couple of days with me. And then after she left, I was under the assumption that there was going to be a change of behavior, but there wasn't one. By 2024, the lack of effort was undeniable, honestly. And I would question, like, am I making a big deal out of this? And then I would gaslight myself and tell myself it's not a big deal. I wanted to talk to her about how I was feeling, and it's something that I went back and forth on. But my gut instinct told me that despite having a conversation with her, it wasn't going to change anything. So ultimately, I went with that. And the last time we communicated was last year in September on her birthday. I reached out to her, wished her well. And while she did respond to that, when I followed up with simply asking how she was doing, there was no response. And then October, November, December, no response. Didn't hear from her. January rolled around, nothing. When April rolled around, I still hadn't heard from her. There was no effort on her part. I had planned a trip to the UK and decided not to tell her that I was coming because I just knew that it didn't matter. And I knew that I probably was going to run into her. And I did. So when I saw her, we were just a few steps apart. I acknowledged her, and she almost looked shocked that like she saw me or that I was there. I'm not sure if shocked is the right word, but that's just how I felt. And that's how it came across in that moment. And I just remember noticing that like she did not put any effort into making her way towards me, and I didn't do the same either. So I felt like in that instance, I just knew that that was like the final nail in the coffin. And I feel like she was okay with how things were prior to that. And I feel like it worked because I would put in the effort, and that didn't bother me until it started to, right? And I had to take a step back and assess our friendship. And I feel like, in my opinion, from where I'm standing, the friendship only lasted as long as it did because I was the one showing up, and that was working out for the both of us. And then when I stopped putting the effort, that was like the end of it. After that interaction in April, I realized that the friendship had been dying for a while, and it had become a one-way street. I still respect and care for her, but I had to accept that, this wasn't the kind of friendship that I wanted. I'm just at the place in my life right now where I don't have the time or energy to entertain acquaintances. Everyone who is a part of my life right now, they're here because we're both putting in the effort to check in on each other and see how everything is going and just making sure that they're okay. And we are in frequent contact with one another. Sometimes we're up each other's asses, but for the most part, we know what's going on in each other's lives. The thing is, I'm really reserved with my time and energy. And I've said this before, time is so freaking precious, right? And I don't want to waste that. So I'm putting all of that into the people who put in the effort with me. And they're not just here when it's convenient for them. So yeah, everyone's different and we all have different expectations. But this is where I am right now. At the end of the day, you can't expect one friend to carry the weight of mutual effort, care, and attention. It's just really unfair for that person. And the more I reflected on this, after everything happened and I digested everything, made peace with it because it really hurt that someone that I thought was going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life was no longer really there. It dawned on me that, sometimes connections are just simply temporary. And this was hard for me to wrap my mind around because I always believed that if you have a healthy connection with someone where there's no drama, no negativity, it's gonna last a lifetime, like why wouldn't you still be friends? Like there's no reason not to be friends, right? So my takeaway from this entire experience was that it's okay to make temporary connections. It's not something that I was okay with before, but it is now. And I'm definitely embracing that more now. Not everyone we meet is gonna be a lifelong fixture in our story. Some people cross our paths for a specific reason. It could be, to teach us something, or to share a particular season of our life, or to provide support during a challenge, or, simply just adding joy for a period of time, and that's it. The best way to look at it is like looking at your connections like a beautiful train ride. Not everyone on the train is gonna go to your final destination, but they can be wonderful companions for a portion of the journey. It's also important to note that our individual paths are constantly evolving, which will directly impact our connections. And I'm not saying that it's not gonna hurt. Like if you lose a friend for no reason, that loss will be painful and we shouldn't dismiss it. It doesn't matter how long you guys known each other. I feel like if you have a deep connection with someone, or you thought that they were going to be a big part of your life and they are no longer a part of your life, it's going to hurt. It is. Through this experience, it served as such a good reminder that people evolve and so do we. We might meet someone one day and feel this incredible alignment and genuinely believe that you will always be in each other's lives. But over time, people grow in different directions, right? Their values might shift, their priorities change, their interests change, and it's nobody's fault. It just happens. At that point, the critical question then becomes, does this person still fit with who you are now? And more importantly, who you're becoming? If they don't, and you find yourself constantly trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, it's a sign. It's a sign to reevaluate that friendship and figure out where you guys stand. One thing that I realized after going through this experience was that no one talks about the grief that comes with a friendship coming to an end, especially when nothing obvious has happened. It's absolutely okay to grieve friendships that you thought were going to last a lifetime. We normalize grieving romantic breakups, even death of a pet, but grieving a friendship that fades, I don't think people really acknowledge this enough. I felt a profound sense of loss, sadness, and confusion when I went through this. The thing is that no matter how hard you try to hold on to someone who no longer aligns with your path, eventually you two will drift. And that's what I learned. It's definitely healthier to acknowledge what's happening, to honor the friendship for what it was, rather than forcing a connection that no longer serves either of you. And it doesn't mean that you hate each other. It just means that you guys are on two different paths and it sucks, but you know what? It's part of life. Now, everything I've talked about regarding friendships applies just as powerfully to romantic relationships. In fact, I think sometimes the stakes feel even higher because it's more of an intimate relationship. And there's that possibility that the two of you will be spending the rest of your lives together. So I feel like the grief is handled differently when it comes to a romantic relationship and when it doesn't end up working out. And the grief could feel even deeper compared to losing a friend. But at the end of the day, we really can't compare grief from one to another. When we hold on to romantic relationships out of fear, rather than genuine connection, we often miss the signs that the relationship has served its purpose. Sometimes people will hold on to partners not out of genuine love, but out of fear. They don't want to be alone. There's that fear of the unknown after being in a relationship for a really long time. There's that fear of what people might say or think if, these two people decide to part ways. But the truth is, just like friendships, when a romantic relationship has served its purpose and run its course, your higher self, that inner knowing, that gut feeling, will often let you know it's time to let go and move on. And I feel like we tend to hold on for much longer than we should. And that procrastination often ends up hurting us and sometimes our partners even more deeply. And even though letting go can feel terrifying, especially when you're stepping out into the great unknown, there's that incredible power in the leap of faith that you take. We often view the unknown as this like dark, scary void, right? But what if we reframed it? What if we saw it as a wide open canvas full of possibilities, new experiences, new people, new unexpected joys? That does not sound scary now, does it? I truly believe that if we collectively embraced the unknown more, there would be significantly less fear when we face the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new one in life, whether it's a friendship, a job, or a romantic partnership. Like, we would head into that new stage with so much more confidence and hope. I came across this quote by Nedra. She's a fantastic therapist and relationship expert. What she said really resonated with me. It can be healthy to slowly move away from friendships that no longer align with who you are without drama. You don't have to let people go completely, but you can spend less time in situations that no longer add value. It's okay to step back from friendships that fit an older version of you. And I feel like that applies to friendships and relationships. We don't have to stay in any relationship that no longer aligns with who we are. Sometimes our old ways of thinking can make us believe just because someone has created no drama in our lives that they deserve to stay at the table. That's not true. When we release the connections that no longer serve us or align with who we are creating space for new connections that will resonate with who we are. The silver lining for me in all of this was that the end of something is always the start of something beautiful. And I did not come to this conclusion in a day. It took me months to get to this place, but I feel happier that I let that connection go because holding on to it was hurting me. So if you're going through something similar, be kind to yourself. You don't need to make a decision right now if this person deserves to be a part of your life or not. Take some time to reflect what a good friendship looks like to you. Define what it means to you. What are your needs and expectations? Can they meet them? When you have a good idea of what you're looking for and what you're able to give, then you're in a better position to decide if this person deserves a seat at the table. And this goes both ways. Every day, we're given a chance to make different choices, right? Either we'll make choices that align with who we are and what we want out of our life, or we won't, and then we will have to face the consequences of that. So before I wrap up today's episode, I want you guys to remember that the evolution or an ending of a friendship and a relationship is normal, okay? It's a healthy part of life. It's okay to acknowledge the loss, to grieve what once was, and to also understand that it doesn't diminish the love or value that connection once held. I feel like sometimes we just start to think of that connection as like a negative one because it ended. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to think of it that way. And most importantly, to release what no longer serves you. It's a powerful act of self-love, in my opinion. This will allow for new beginnings, more aligned connections and experiences. I want to remind you guys that letting go isn't a sign of failure or weakness. It's definitely a profound act of strength, self-awareness, and respect for your own evolving journey. You are honoring your past, present, and future self by making space for what truly belongs at the end of the day. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Have you guys experienced a friendship or a relationship shift that really taught you a valuable lesson about letting go? And what was your biggest takeaway? And that's it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Skip to Saturday. Have a great weekend. And make sure to tune in next Thursday for an all-new episode. Take care.